Hi, this is Glenn Guy from the Travel Photography Guru. I wanted to continue today on our exploration of China, particularly relating to my upcoming tour in January of 2012. Today's presentation is going to concentrate on photographing Snow World, which is a fantastic opportunity for photography. It's in Harbin in far northeast China, basically situated between Siberia and North Korea. So you would imagine it's very isolated, but in fact, I was very surprised in researching the location to see that the population of Harbin is approximately 9.8 million people. Certainly when you're there, you get the feeling that it's a big city, but nothing of that size. I believe it's the 10th largest city in China. It's a major tourist destination, Harbin, and a trade centre of great importance. Famous for very dry, cold winters and, interestingly, quite hot, humid summers. Apparently, the vast majority of rain that falls occurs in the summer period. So in winter, again, very cold but dry. So this is inside Snow World itself. It's a very large complex. I spent I think 3 hours wandering around, and you could certainly spend longer, but I pretty much covered all of the complex, and I had a ball. I just thought it was fantastic, and I was able to wander around completely unhindered. I had a tripod with me, which I only used on a couple of occasions, but I mention the fact because often when we're seen with tripods, we're seen to be kind of evil, or we're seen to be maybe professional photographers, and people that work in the in these parks and these locations think that we're making money from their product. I experienced none of that. I was able to wander around freely. The staff that I did see there were incredibly kind and happy people. It was, they really seemed to love their job. I actually suspect they've been very well trained to deal with tourists. It was a great experience. Throughout the park there are these larger-than-life sculptures of all sorts of iconic images. A few religious ones, as you see here. Buildings from history, I suppose, and little stories from history. This has got a sort of theatrical element to it. All sorts of interesting, iconic structures to photograph. And they're all made from snow. So you see very well-tended pathways that take you from one part of the complex to another. This is one of the more remote areas. I get off the beaten track whenever I can, still within the Snow World precinct, I suppose, within the gates. No one within cooey, as we would say in Australia. This is actually at the gates to the complex. Certainly we need to be prepared for the cold. It gets down to -20, but I'm from quite a mild part of the world. I live in Melbourne, Australia these days, but I had no problem at all. I was prepared. Certainly dressing in layers, using fleece is an excellent way to keep you warm without adding too much weight. A lot of people find that the merino fleece, so merino wool fleece combinations work well. For me, the merino tends to be a bit itchy, and I think if you're going to buy some clothing for the trip, you certainly need to test it, wear it, wash it a few times to make sure that it's comfortable and works for you. Good hat, gloves. Balaclava was interesting. I only used the balaclava once, and that was actually at a night shoot at Ice World. The overboots I wore quite a bit, and basically I've got thick socks, good quality shoes, and then I slip my shoes inside to these rubberized overboots. Now they're very light. They've got pretty good traction on the soles, and they come up probably about the high end of the calf, I guess. They allow you to walk around in the snow without getting your feet wet, and if you go off the path at all, you can go probably 30 to 40 centimetres into the snow without that moisture getting inside your boot. So they're fantastic, and as I say, they're light, so quite comfortable to wear. Keep your feet dry and warm. So here are some of the structures, and it's always nice to include some people occasionally for a sense of scale. This is one of the smaller structures that I photographed. And I've never been to Disneyland, but I always find these things funny. course, it's very important to understand how to use our camera to get appropriate exposure for ice and snow. So you gather as much information as you can so that when the images are processed on the computer, they look good. Talking here predominantly about exposing with your camera set to RAW and then processing the images in a way, as I say, that they look good. If you're a JPEG shooter, really it's a different approach. But in any case, I would be looking after both types of shooters, JPEG and RAW, explaining the differences between the different approaches, and from my point of view it's irrelevant as to what's best. That is sort of the discussion that I'm sure goes on in forums over the internet, but it's what's appropriate to the user. And if you hate working on the computer, and for you joy is being out in the world photographing, and you find that having to spend hours upon hours on the computer actually robs you of that joy, well then JPEG is for you. In the case of JPEG, you're pushing the button and the camera's grabbing the file and processing it, a bit like the way a photo lab would process film in the old days to give you an acceptable print. RAW, you are the photo lab, so the image, the RAW file actually doesn't look any good. It has to be processed to look good, and you're in charge of that. So you make decisions as to the sharpness, the contrast, the brightness, the colour, the vividness of the colour, a whole range of criteria you're responsible for. So I think really if you like control, and in this case it's necessarily a bad thing, if you want to control the result, you will have far more opportunities to do that with RAW processing. However, it takes time, and the learning curve, if you're new to it, is quite steep unless you're taught well. JPEG is a simple way to shoot, and you can get good results if you're careful with the way you photograph. With RAW, you can actually produce much better results, but again, you have to do the work on the computer. Now, the other thing is when you photograph art, why would you photograph it? Because it's just a photograph of the sculpture in this case. Well, you can photograph it as a record, get someone to photograph you there, or you photograph your travelling companion, your partner at that location to document your holiday. And the other way to photograph it is with a more creative, more artistic approach where you're actually making art from art. World-centered pathways, as I mentioned, so it's quite easy to get around from area to area within this very large complex. And I found that the pathways became, in a way, a kind of a theme when I started to edit this work together. So this is near the main entrance gate. Lots of local tourists. It's a very, very popular place. And of course, they're all taking pictures. Dark trees in the snow, quite a minimalistic approach. You know, we're all aware of Japanese art that uses this approach, and it's quite lovely. Working with the lines, the trees, and of course their shadows, lines as well. And the way the shadows connect one tree to another, the space between the trees. Interesting how we read an image like that, like it's probably got a slightly lonely feel to it. But there is a figure at the end of the road, and I think the viewer connects with that person in some way. Trees are beautiful, but how do you photograph a forest? Sometimes the best way to photograph a forest is to concentrate on a group of trees or a single tree separated from the surroundings, a leaf, because you cannot tell the story of a forest by trying to encompass all of that forest in your photograph. So sometimes the one stands for the many. I wouldn't say it's a theme park, but there's one or two areas that are, I suppose, put aside for fun and games, and this is one of them. It's got a marble look to it, that one, but again, it's made from snow. Weather-wise, very still. I had no wind at this place. The sky was either this light cloud cover, or on occasions a bright blue sky would appear, because they virtually get no rain in winter. The pathways, the pavilions, you can imagine in outside of winter, you know, that there would be a lake here, of course, and it would have a quite different look. Using the trees here to frame the pavilion and the bridge to lead out towards it visually. The trees acting as a frame for the bridge, which in itself is a frame for what's underneath and through it. It's almost like a window. So the notion of frames within frames. It's an interesting structure. Usually I'm quite subtle, I like to think, with the way I process photos, but on occasions I just have a bit of fun. And in this case I'm really trying to bring out the shape and colour on this rocky surface. And this concept is called night as day, so photographing a scene to make it in the middle of the day to make it look like it's shot at night time. I always think that the most interesting statues are those that seem to have a personality, so I often come in relatively close and photograph them as portraits. I think they're much more expressive that way. Another day as night scene. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the majority of the sculpture is particularly elegant. Some might see it as a little crass, but it's just a lot of fun. And we're talking about half a day out of the 10-day tour spent at Snow World, but it's full on for photography. You know, you could easily shoot 1,000 frames. I probably shot 300, but I come from a long experience of film shooting, so I'm probably much more conservative in the way I shoot compared to most other folks. So the tour is happening in January 2012 over 10 days. There'll be a maximum of 10 people. Accommodation, meals and internal flights will all be provided, as will any other local transport such as taxis. There'll be photography theory sessions, photography practical sessions, each one relating to, you know, the next location that we would be visiting, so information that's appropriate to the photos you're about to make. Some image processing information as well. The exclusions would be, of course, your airfares, drinks and snacks that you may decide to purchase for yourself during the tour, and of course any accommodation and associated costs that you incur prior to the beginning, after the end of the tour. Just a few extra shots here now. This is made not far from Snow World, and I saw this and I just thought it just looked like huge blocks of Turkish delight, so I thought it was extraordinary. And then moving in close to examine it in a little bit more detail. Beautiful colours. And just having a bit of fun. This is the sort of thing that sometimes happens to me when I'm working well after midnight. Sometimes you just have a little bit of fun with the process. So this is not reality, but for goodness sake, we're photographing ice sculptures which are kind of unreal in themselves, and really it's just trying to explore the effect that light has as it passes through the ice, and of course the effect that colour has on the ice as well. So you can find me on my blog, travelphotographyguru.com, on Facebook, facebook.com/travelphotographyguru, and Twitter, twitter.com/travelphotoguru. There's quite a lot of work that goes into a presentation like this, actually a lot of work, so I would very much appreciate any feedback that you can provide, and also if you like the information I'm providing, if you like the images, it would be great to just get the old thumbs up. You know, if you could just click the like button, that would be greatly appreciated.